Temperance McCrae's hand tightened on the porch post hard enough to splinter wood. The man tying his horse to the rail outside her hotel was supposed to be 200 miles away and 5 years buried in her past. Eamon Rourke looked up, met her eyes, and the world narrowed to the 10 feet of dust-blown boardwalk between them. He looked older, leaner. The tan duster coat was new, but the set of his shoulders was achingly familiar. He touched the brim of his hat, and she hated how her heart kicked against her ribs. "Move," she told herself. "Go inside. Bolt the door." But her boots stayed planted on sun-warmed wood, and Eamon crossed the distance in 4 long strides. Up close, she could see the scar along his jaw, new since he left. His eyes were still that impossible blue-gray storm clouds over steel, and they searched her face with an intensity that made her want to slap him. "I came back," he said quietly. She finally found her voice. "You shouldn't have." The door of the Silver Spur Saloon banged open across the street, and Temperance forced herself to turn away. Dust Basin was too small for secrets. By sundown, every soul in town would know Eamon Rourke had returned, and by morning, they would remember why he left. She stepped toward the hotel door, but his hand caught her wrist. Not rough. Careful, like he was afraid she would shatter. "Temperance, I need 5 minutes. You had 5 years." She pulled free and walked inside, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the glass. Through the window, she watched him stand there, hat in hand, staring at the closed door. Then, he turned toward the blacksmith shop at the end of the street. Old Garrett's shop. The one Eamon had worked in before he vanished the night the bank strongbox went missing. Her stomach twisted. The town had blamed him. She had believed them. And now he was back, walking into that shop like he had every right. Temperance pressed her forehead against the cool glass. The hotel ledger on the desk behind her showed 3 weeks until the water rights auction. 3 weeks until Marshall Cord would seize the creek rights and choke Dust Basin dry, unless someone could outbid him. The town council had scraped together $400. Cord had twice that, and the backing of the territorial governor. She should hate Eamon for coming back now, when everything was already falling apart. But part of her, the part she had tried to bury, whispered that maybe his timing was not coincidence. The sun dipped toward the hills, painting the street in shades of rust and gold. Temperance straightened her shawl and forced herself to move. The evening stage would arrive in an hour. She had rooms to prepare, a dining room to set, and no time to waste on ghosts. But when she turned from the window, she found Garrett standing in her lobby, hat in hand, looking older than his 60 years. "He needs a place to stay," Garrett said without preamble. "No. Temperance. Please." She crossed her arms. "He can sleep in your shop. Or under the stars. I don't care." Garrett sighed, deep and weary. He bought the shop, paid cash. He is not just passing through. The words hit like a fist. Temperance gripped the edge of the registration desk. He bought it? Full price. Signed the deed this afternoon. He is staying, Temperance. And this town needs a blacksmith. She wanted to scream. Instead, she opened the ledger and turned it toward Garrett. Then, he can pay like everyone else. $2 a week. No whiskey in the rooms. No visitors after 9. Garrett nodded slowly. I will tell him. After the old man left, Temperance sank into the chair behind the desk. Her hands were shaking, Eamon had bought the shop. That meant money. Real money. The kind of money that could have saved her father's hotel 3 years ago when the debts nearly buried them. The kind of money he claimed he did not have when he left. The stage rattled in right on time, bringing 2 drummers and a widow heading to Sacramento. Temperance showed them to their rooms, served a quiet supper of stew and cornbread, and tried not to think about the fact that Eamon Rourke was somewhere in her hotel tonight. She found out where at midnight, when she carried fresh linens upstairs and saw lamplight under the door of room 7. The corner room. The one with the window facing the blacksmith shop. Of course, she should leave the linens outside his door and go to bed. Instead, she knocked. The door opened immediately, like he had been waiting. Eamon filled the doorframe, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, collar open. The lamplight behind him turned his hair to bronze. He looked at the linens in her arms, then at her face. "Thank you," he said. $2 a week, she said flatly. Paid in advance. He pulled a small leather purse from his vest and counted out coins into her palm. His fingers brushed hers, calloused and warm. She pulled back fast. "Why did you come back?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Eamon's jaw tightened. "Because I made a promise." To who? To myself. He stepped back, giving her space. "And to you, whether you believe it or not." Temperance's throat burned. "You left me standing in front of the church. The whole town knew. They knew I was waiting, and you never came." "I know. That is all you have to say?" His eyes went dark with something that looked like pain. "No. But the rest will take more than 5 minutes, and you are not ready to hear it." She wanted to throw the coins back in his face. Instead, she turned and walked away, spine straight, refusing to let him see her shake. But halfway down the hall, his voice followed her, low and rough. "Temperance, I am sorry." She did not look back. The next morning, Temperance woke to the sound of hammering. She dressed quickly, braided her hair, and went downstairs to find the dining room already full. The drummers, the widow, and half the town council, all eating eggs and biscuits while pretending not to stare at the window. Outside, Eamon was repairing the boardwalk in front of the blacksmith shop. Shirtless in the early heat, muscles moving under sun-browned skin as he drove nails with methodical precision. Every woman in the room had noticed. Temperance poured coffee with more force than necessary. Councilman Briggs cleared his throat. "Miss McCrae, the council meeting is tonight. We hope you will attend." She set the pot down carefully. "I will be there." "Good. We need every voice." Briggs lowered his tone. "Cord was seen at the land office yesterday. He is moving faster than we expected." Her stomach dropped. "How much time do we have?" Briggs glanced at the other council members. 2 weeks. Maybe less. If he files the claim early and we cannot match his bid, the judge will grant him the water rights by default. Temperance's hands went cold. 2 weeks was not enough. The town had scraped together $400 by selling everything they could spare. Cord had twice that, and more coming from his sponsors in the territorial government. Without the creek rights, Dust Basin would dry up by summer. The cattle would die. The crops would fail. The town would become a ghost. "What about loans?" she asked. Briggs shook his head. "No bank will lend against a town that might not exist in 6 months." Temperance forced herself to nod. Then, we fight harder. That night, the council met in the church. Temperance arrived early and took a seat near the front. She felt Eamon enter before she saw him. He moved to the back wall and leaned there, arms crossed, silent. Briggs called the meeting to order. We have 14 days until the auction. Our current funds total $420. Marshall Cord's last known total is $800 and climbing. We need solutions. Silence filled the small church. Then Garrett stood, hat in hand. What if we sell the old Willow Ranch? The ranch has been empty for 3 years, Briggs said gently. No one will buy land without water rights. Another voice spoke up. What about a loan against future cattle sales? Not enough time to arrange it. Temperance watched the hope drain from the room. These were good people, hard-working people. They had built this town with their hands and sweat, and now a corrupt marshal was going to take it, because he had the law and the money on his side. Eamon's voice cut through the despair, quiet but clear. What if someone married into the water rights? Every head turned. Briggs frowned. What do you mean? The original claim, Eamon said, pushing off the wall and walking forward, was filed by Samuel McCrae in 1868. When he died, the claim passed to his daughter. If she married before the auction, her husband would have joint legal standing to contest Cord's bid. Temperance's heart stopped. Eamon was looking straight at her. Briggs caught on fast. If Miss McCrae's husband filed a counterclaim as a resident landowner, he could argue prior established use. That might give us legal grounds to delay the auction. Or win it outright, Eamon said. If he had enough capital to match Cord's bid, the room erupted. Voices overlapped, some hopeful, some skeptical. Temperance sat frozen, her mind racing. Eamon walked to the front and stopped 3 feet from her chair. I have $800 in a San Francisco bank. I can wire for it tonight. If you marry me before the auction, I can file the counterclaim and force Cord into a legal fight he cannot win. She stared at him. You want me to marry you for water rights? I want to save this town. His eyes were steady. And I owe you a wedding. The room went silent. Temperance felt every gaze on her. She stood slowly, shawl slipping from her shoulders. You think you can buy your way back into my life? No. But I can buy time. And if you agree, I will sign a contract giving you full control of the funds and the ranch. If we win, you can dissolve the marriage the next day. I will not fight it. Briggs leaned forward. Miss McCrae, I know this is difficult, but it might be our only chance. Temperance wanted to scream. She wanted to throw something. Instead, she looked at Eamon, really looked, and saw the truth in his face. He meant it, every word. And if we lose? She asked. Then we lose together. Her pulse hammered. The room waited. Outside, the wind rattled the church windows, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Temperance took a breath. Fine, but I want it in writing, every detail. And you sleep in the shop until this is over. Eamon nodded once. Agreed. Briggs exhaled hard. Then we have a plan. I will draw up the contract tonight. The wedding can take place in 3 days, as soon as the paperwork is ready. Temperance turned and walked out of the church before anyone could see her hands shake. She made it halfway to the hotel. before Eamon caught up with her. Temperance. Wait. She spun on him. Do not pretend this is anything but a business arrangement. I am not pretending. Then what are you doing? He stepped closer, and she hated how her breath caught. I am trying to fix what I broke. I am trying to give you a chance to keep your home. You left me, she said, and her voice cracked despite her best effort. You left me, standing in that church, and now you want me to walk into it again and pretend everything is fine. I know. His hand lifted, almost touched her face, then dropped. I know what I did, and I know you have no reason to trust me. But I am asking anyway. Why now? Why not 3 years ago, when my father was dying and the debts were crushing us? Because 3 years ago, I was wanted for robbery. Because I spent 2 years in a Nevada mine working off a debt I did not owe, trying to clear my name. Because I only got free 6 months ago, and it took me this long to save enough to come back. The words hung between them like smoke. Temperance stared at him, trying to parse truth from lies. You were in a mine. Yes. Working off a debt you did not owe. Yes. Why did you not write? Why did you not tell me? Because I was ashamed. His voice went rough. Because I thought you deserved better than a man accused of theft, locked underground, with no future and no way to prove his innocence. I thought you would move on. I waited 2 years, she whispered. I know. And I am sorry. She turned away before he could see the tears. I need time. We do not have much. Then I will decide fast. But tonight, I need to be alone. He let her go. She walked back to the hotel, climbed the stairs, and locked herself in her room. Then, she sat on the bed and let herself cry for the first time in 3 years. The next morning, Temperance woke with grit in her eyes and a plan in her heart. She dressed, went downstairs, and found Briggs waiting in the lobby with a sheaf of papers. The contract, he said. Everything work promised. In writing. If you sign, you retain full legal control of all assets. The marriage can be dissolved at any time after the auction, with no financial obligation on your part. She read every line twice. It was airtight. Eamon had signed already, his signature bold and clear at the bottom. Temperance picked up the pen. Her hand hovered over the paper. Then, she signed. Briggs witnessed it, folded the document, and nodded. The ceremony is set for Sunday at noon. I will file the claim Monday morning. She nodded. Numb. 3 days. She had 3 days to prepare for a wedding she never wanted, to a man she did not trust, for a town that depended on her. No pressure. Eamon stayed away for the next 2 days. Temperance saw him working in the shop, saw the smoke from his forge, heard the ring of hammer on anvil. But he did not come to the hotel, and she did not seek him out. On Saturday, she went to the general store for fabric. She was not going to wear white. That ship had sailed 5 years ago. But she needed something clean, something that would not make her look like she was attending a funeral. Mrs. Harlow, the storekeeper's wife, pulled out a bolt of pale gray cotton with tiny blue flowers. It is simple, but it suits you. Temperance ran her fingers over the fabric. How much? Mrs. Harlow hesitated. Consider it a wedding gift. Temperance's throat tightened. Thank you. That afternoon, she sat in her room and sewed. The dress came together quickly, plain and practical. with long sleeves and a high collar. No lace, no ribbons, just clean lines and honest stitches. When she finished, she hung it on the door and stared at it. Tomorrow, she would put it on and walk into that church. Tomorrow, she would marry Eamon Rourke in front of the whole town. And then, she would spend the next 2 weeks fighting to keep her home. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like relief. At least now, she had a plan. Sunday came too fast. Temperance dressed in the gray cotton, pinned her hair, and walked to the church alone. The whole town had turned out. She saw faces she had known her entire life. People who had watched her grow up, who had mourned her father, who had believed the worst of Eamon 5 years ago. Now they were here to watch her marry him. Eamon waited at the front, clean-shaven, wearing a dark vest over a white shirt. He looked nervous. That almost made her smile. Briggs stood between them, Bible in hand. He kept the ceremony short. No flowery language, no promises of love, just the legal words that would bind them long enough to save the town. Do you, Temperance McCrae, take this man as your lawful husband? Her voice came out steady. I do. Do you, Eamon Rourke, take this woman as your lawful wife? I do. Briggs closed the Bible. By the power vested in me by the territory, I pronounce you married. You may kiss your bride. Eamon's eyes met hers, asking permission. Temperance nodded once, barely. He leaned in, and his lips brushed hers, soft and brief and achingly careful. Then it was done. The town erupted in polite applause. Temperance turned to face them, Eamon's hand warm against her back, and forced herself to smile. They made it through the next hour on autopilot. Handshakes. Congratulations. A small meal in the hotel dining room that she barely tasted. Then the crowd dispersed, and she was alone with Eamon in the lobby. He cleared his throat. I will move my things to the shop. No. The word surprised her. You are my husband now. On paper, at least. People will expect you to stay here. Temperance. In a separate room, she clarified. But under the same roof. We need to make this look real. He studied her face, then nodded. All right. She showed him to the room next to hers. It was small, barely more than a bed and a washstand, but it had a window and a lock. He set his saddlebags down and turned to face her. Thank you, he said quietly. Do not thank me yet. We still have to win. That night, Temperance lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling. Through the thin wall, she could hear Eamon moving in the next room. The creak of the bed, the rustle of cloth. Then, silence. She closed her eyes and tried not to think about the fact that she was married. Tried not to think about the way his lips had felt against hers, or the warmth of his hand on her back. This was business. Nothing more. But when she finally slept, she dreamed of a different wedding. One where he had shown up. One where she had not spent 5 years hating him. One where the kiss had not ended. The next morning, Briggs filed the counterclaim. By noon, the whole territory knew that Eamon Rourke had married into the McCrae water rights and was challenging Marshall Cord's bid. By sunset, Cord was standing in the hotel lobby, badge gleaming, face hard as stone. Mrs. Rourke, Cord said, voice dripping false courtesy. Congratulations on your recent nuptials. Temperance kept her hands steady on the registration desk. What can I do for you, Marshall? You can tell your husband that filing false claims is a serious offense. There is nothing false about it. Cord smiled, cold and thin. We will see what the judge says. But I thought you should know. I have been asking questions about Mr. Rourke. Interesting man. Spent 2 years in a Nevada mine. Some say he was working off a debt. Others say he was hiding from the law. He was falsely accused. So he says. Cord leaned closer. But the bank robbery in Dust Basin 5 years ago was never solved. And now he comes back with a pile of money, right when you need it most. Convenient, is it not? Her stomach turned cold. Get out of my hotel. Cord straightened, adjusting his coat. I am just doing my job, ma'am. Protecting the interests of this territory. If Rourke's money is stolen, the judge will void your claim and charge him with fraud. I would hate to see you lose everything, because you trusted the wrong man. He tipped his hat and walked out. Temperance's knees almost buckled. She gripped the desk, fighting to breathe. If Cord could prove the money was stolen, they would lose everything. Worse, Eamon would go to prison, and she would lose him all over again. The realization hit her like a fist. She would lose him, not the marriage, not the plan. Him. When had that happened? Eamon appeared from the hallway, face tight. I heard. Is it true? She forced herself to ask. Is the money stolen? No. His eyes were fierce. I earned every dollar, but I cannot prove it. The mine paid in cash, off the books. There are no records. Then Cord will use it against us. He will try. Eamon crossed to her, and she did not pull away when he took her hands. Temperance, if this goes bad, I will take the blame. I will tell the judge you did not know. You will not go down with me. She stared at him, and something inside her cracked open. You are an idiot. What? If you go down, I go down. That is what married means. This is not a real marriage. It is real enough. She pulled her hands free, heart pounding. It is real enough that I am not letting you sacrifice yourself for a town that already blamed you once. Temperance. No. Her voice shook. We fight together, or not at all. He looked at her like she was something rare and breakable. Then, we fight together. The next week crawled by. Cord filed motions. Briggs countered. The judge scheduled a hearing for 3 days before the auction. Eamon worked the forge from dawn to dusk, shoeing horses, repairing tools, anything to keep his hands busy. Temperance ran the hotel and tried not to think about the fact that she was starting to care. It was the small things that got her. The way he fixed the loose board on the porch without being asked. The way he made coffee in the morning and left a cup on her desk. The way he looked at her when he thought she was not watching, like she was the answer to a question he had been asking for 5 years. One night, the hotel roof started leaking during a rainstorm. Temperance grabbed a bucket and climbed the narrow ladder to the attic. But the damage was worse than she thought. Water poured through a split seam, and the wind howled through gaps in the shingles. She was trying to wedge a board over the leak when Eamon appeared at the top of the ladder, drenched and scowling. What are you doing? He shouted over the storm. Fixing the roof. Get down before you fall! Not until this is sealed! He climbed into the attic and grabbed the board from her hands. I will do it. You hold the lamp. They worked in silence, rain hammering the roof, wind tearing at the shingles. Eamon drove nails with grim efficiency, and Temperance held the light steady, watching the muscles in his back move under the soaked shirt. When the leak was sealed, he turned to her, hair plastered to his face, and grinned. That should hold until morning. She should have thanked him. Instead, she started laughing. Wild, breathless laughter that echoed in the cramped attic. Eamon stared at her like she had lost her mind, and that made her laugh harder. "What?" he asked, grinning despite himself. "We are standing in a leaking attic in the middle of a storm, fighting for water rights we might not win. And you are smiling. So are you." She wiped her eyes. "I think we are both insane." "Probably." He reached out and tucked a wet strand of hair behind her ear. "But I would rather be insane with you than sane anywhere else." Her breath caught. "Eamon." "I." The ladder creaked below. "Temperance? Eamon? You up there?" Briggs's voice shattered the moment. Eamon pulled back, and Temperance grabbed the lamp. "Coming." They climbed down to find Briggs waiting, hat dripping, face grim. "The hearing is moved up. Tomorrow at 10. Temperance's stomach dropped. "Tomorrow?" Cord filed an emergency motion. "He claims he has evidence that Eamon's money is stolen." "What evidence?" Eamon demanded. "I do not know." But the judge granted the motion. If we cannot prove the money is clean, he will void the counterclaim on the spot. Temperance looked at Eamon. His jaw was set, but she saw the fear in his eyes. "We will prove it," she said. "How?" "I do not know yet. But we will." That night, Temperance sat at her desk, staring at the ledger. There had to be something. Some record. Some witness. Some proof that Eamon had earned that money. A soft knock made her look up. Eamon stood in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use this," he said. She took the cup, grateful for the warmth. "Thank you." He sat down across from her, silent for a long moment. Then he said, "There is something I did not tell you." She waited. "The man who ran the mine. His name was August Teller. He paid me under the table because he was skimming from his investors. If I testify to that, it will prove where the money came from. But it will also send Teller to prison." "Why did you not say this before?" "Because Teller has a family, a wife, and 2 daughters. And I gave him my word I would not talk." Temperance set down her cup. "Eamon, if you do not talk, you will lose everything." "I know." His eyes were steady. "But I have already broken one promise. I will not break another unless I have no other choice." Her throat tightened. "You are a better man than you think you are." He laughed, bitter and low. "I am a man who left you standing at the altar. I am not sure that qualifies. You had reasons. Bad reasons. Maybe." She leaned forward. "But you came back. And you are trying to make it right. That counts for something." That counts for something. Does it? He met her eyes, and the rawness there stole her breath. "Does it count enough for you to forgive me?" She opened her mouth, closed it. The truth sat on her tongue, heavy and terrifying. "I do not know yet. But I am starting to think I might." His hand reached across the desk, palm up. She looked at it for a long moment. Then, she slid her hand into his. They sat like that, fingers laced, while the storm raged outside and the lamp burned low. And for the first time in 5 years, Temperance felt something close to hope. The hearing started at 10 sharp. The courtroom was packed. Judge Harlan presided, stern and gray-haired. Cord sat at the front, smug and confident. Briggs sat beside Temperance and Eamon, papers spread before him. The judge banged his gavel. "We are here to consider Marshal Cord's motion to void the Rourke counterclaim on grounds of fraudulent funds. Marshal, present your evidence." Cord stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Rourke claims his funds were earned legally in a Nevada mine. However, I have testimony from a bank clerk in Carson City stating that Rourke deposited $800 in cash 6 months ago, with no documentation of origin. Furthermore, Rourke was present in Dust Basin the night of the bank robbery 5 years ago, and he fled town immediately after. That does not prove the money is stolen," Briggs objected. "It raises reasonable doubt," Cord countered. "And under territorial law, that is sufficient to void a contested claim." The judge frowned. "Mr. Rourke, can you provide documentation proving the origin of these funds?" Eamon stood. "No, Your Honor. The mine paid in cash. There are no records. Then I have no choice but to." "Your Honor." Temperance was on her feet before she realized it. "May I speak?" The judge raised an eyebrow. "This is highly irregular, Mrs. Rourke. I understand. But I have relevant testimony. Proceed." Temperance's heart pounded. She had not planned this. But she could not sit there and watch Eamon lose everything without fighting. "Your Honor, 5 years ago, I believed my fiancé had abandoned me. I believed he was guilty of robbery. But I was wrong." She looked at Eamon, then back at the judge. "Eamon Rourke left Dust Basin to protect me. He left because he was falsely accused, and he knew that staying would destroy my reputation along with his. He spent 2 years working in a mine, earning that money honestly, so he could come back and clear his name. And when he did come back, he used that money to save this town, not himself." "That is a moving story, Mrs. Rourke," the judge said. "But it is not evidence. Then let me provide evidence." She turned to the crowd. "Is August Teller in this courtroom?" Silence. Then a man in the back row stood, face pale. "I am Teller." Temperance's breath caught. "Mr. Teller, did you employ Eamon Rourke in your Nevada mine 2 years ago?" Teller hesitated. Then he nodded. "I did." "And did you pay him $800 in cash over the course of 2 years?" "Yes." "Why did you not provide documentation?" Teller's jaw tightened. "Because I was skimming from my investors. I paid Rourke under the table to avoid scrutiny. If I had documented his wages, my theft would have been exposed." The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. "Order!" Cord shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this man just admitted to fraud. His testimony is worthless." "On the contrary," the judge said coldly, "this man just provided exactly the documentation Mr. Rourke could not. And in doing so, he has incriminated himself." He turned to Teller. "Mr. Teller, you will remain in custody pending investigation." 2 deputies moved toward Teller. Eamon stood abruptly. Your Honor. Wait. The judge raised an eyebrow. Yes, Mr. Rourke? Teller came here voluntarily to clear my name, knowing it would cost him his freedom. He has a wife and 2 daughters who depend on him. I asked the court to show leniency. The judge studied Eamon for a long moment. Then, he nodded. I will take that into consideration. But Mr. Teller must still face charges. Teller met Eamon's eyes across the courtroom and nodded once. Silent thanks. Then, the deputies led him away. The judge turned back to court. Marshal, your motion is denied. The Rourke counterclaim stands. The auction will proceed as scheduled, with both parties present. Court's face went dark. But, Your Honor, my decision is final. The judge banged his gavel. Court is adjourned. The room erupted in cheers. Temperance sank into her chair, shaking. Eamon's hand found hers under the table, and she held on like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. They won. Not the auction, not yet. But this battle. This one impossible battle. And Eamon had risked everything to fight it. Outside, the town gathered around them. Briggs pumped Eamon's hand. Garrett clapped him on the back. Even the women who had whispered about Temperance 5 years ago offered shy congratulations. But Temperance barely heard them. She was watching Cord across the street, leaning against the saloon, eyes cold and calculating. This was not over. That night, Temperance lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She could hear Eamon in the next room again, but this time, the sound did not make her uneasy. It made her feel safe. Somewhere in the last week, her feelings had shifted. She did not know when. Maybe it was the roof. Maybe it was the courtroom. Maybe it was the way he had looked at her when she stood up to defend him. Or maybe it was the slow accumulation of 100 small moments. Coffee on her desk, fixed boards, quiet conversations. The way he listened when she talked, like her words mattered. She closed her eyes and admitted the truth. She was falling for him. Again. Still. Maybe she had never stopped. The thought terrified her. Because in 10 days, the auction would happen. They would win or lose. And then what? They had agreed the marriage could be dissolved. Eamon had promised not to fight it. But what if she did not want to dissolve it? What if she wanted him to stay? The next morning, Eamon found her on the porch, watching the sunrise. He climbed the steps and stood beside her. Close, but not touching. You saved me yesterday, he said quietly. You saved yourself. I just gave you the chance. No. He turned to face her. You stood up in front of the whole town and defended me. You risked your reputation, your business, everything. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. Temperance. His voice was rough. That is not the only reason. She closed her eyes. No. It is not. Then tell me. Her heart hammered. Because I care about you. Because I am tired of pretending this is just business. Because somewhere in the last 2 weeks, I stopped hating you and started remembering why I loved you in the first place. The words hung in the air, raw and terrifying. Eamon stared at her, and she braced for rejection. Instead, he stepped closer. I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day in 5 years. Then why did you leave? Because I was a coward. because I thought you deserved better than a man accused of theft, with no future and no way to clear his name. I thought, if I left, you could move on and find someone worthy of you. I did not want someone else. Her voice cracked. I wanted you. I know. And I am sorry. He reached up, cupped her face in his hands. I am so damn sorry. She leaned into his touch, tears spilling over. What do we do now? We finish this. We win the auction. And then, if you will have me, we make this marriage real. Her breath caught. You want to stay? I want to stay. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up every morning and see your face. I want to fix roofs and fight marshals and grow old arguing with you about everything. His thumb brushed her cheek. If you will have me. She kissed him, hard and desperate, and full of 5 years of longing. He pulled her close, one hand in her hair, the other around her waist, and kissed her back like she was air, and he had been drowning. When they finally broke apart, breathless and shaking, she whispered, Yes. Yes? She lead more suppose bitri, what's bless, suppressed around her. The mentingen stressed to went to where their illustration, or where there is this place where a losting loves white. Yes? Cone liked reanding attempt to get out on her. Clow fell minded then, all the quine planet or spoons the twice. Yes, I will have you. Yes, I want you to stay. Yes, to all of it. He laughed, bright and incredulous, and kissed her again. They spent the next week preparing for the auction. Eamon wired for the money. Briggs drew up the final paperwork. The town rallied, offering support in any way they could. But Cord was not idle. Rumors started spreading. Whispers in the saloon. Anonymous letters questioning Eamon's past. A sudden uptick in strangers in town. Hard-eyed men who watched the hotel and the blacksmith shop. On the 5th night, Temperance woke to the smell of smoke. She bolted out of bed and ran to the window. The blacksmith shop was on fire. Eamon! She pounded on his door. Eamon! Wake up! He appeared instantly, already pulling on his boots. I see it. They ran together through the dark streets. Half the town was already there, forming a bucket line from the creek. Eamon grabbed a bucket and plunged into the smoke. Temperance joined the line, passing water, her lungs burning. It took an hour to kill the flames. When the smoke cleared, the shop was gutted. The forge was destroyed. The roof had collapsed. Everything Eamon had worked for was gone. He stood in the ashes, face streaked with soot, staring at the ruin. Temperance crossed to him and took his hand. We will rebuild. He shook his head. There is no time. The auction is in 5 days. Then we find another way. Temperance. His voice was hollow. I have nothing left. The shop is gone. The tools are gone. I cannot fight Cord now. Yes, you can. She gripped his shoulders, forcing him to look at her. We still have the counterclaim. We still have the money. And we still have each other. That is not enough. It is everything. He closed his eyes. Then, slowly, he nodded. The next morning, Cord showed up at the hotel. His smile was sharp. Shame about the fire. Accidents happen. That was no accident, Temperance said coldly. Prove it. Cord leaned against the desk. Here's the thing, Mrs. Rourke. Even if you show up at the auction, You have no legal standing without a functioning business. Your husband is a blacksmith with no shop. The judge will rule that your claim is invalid. You are wrong. Am I? Cord straightened. Let me make you an offer. Drop the counterclaim. Let me buy the water rights. I will give you enough money to rebuild the shop and leave town with a clean slate. Everyone wins. Except the town. The town will survive. No. She met his eyes. It will die. And you know it. Cord's smile faded. Then you will die with it. Because I promise you, Mrs. Rourke, I will win that auction. And when I do, I will make sure your husband pays for every second of trouble he has caused me. He walked out. Temperance stood there, shaking with fury. Then she grabbed her shawl and marched to the church. Briggs was inside, reviewing documents. He looked up when she entered. Temperance, are you all right? No. She sat down hard. Cord set the fire. He threatened us. And he says we have no legal standing without the shop. Briggs's face went grim. He is not wrong. The claim is based on Eamon's status as a resident business owner. If the business is destroyed, the judge could rule that status void. Then we find another business. There is no time. Temperance's mind raced. Then we prove Eamon is a resident another way. What about marriage? I am a resident. I own the hotel. Does that not count? Briggs blinked. Actually, yes. If Eamon can prove he is a co-owner of the hotel through marriage, that establishes residency. But you would have to add him to the deed. Then do it. Temperance. That means he would own half of everything. If this goes bad, you could lose the hotel. She thought of Eamon standing in the ashes, hollow-eyed. She thought of the way he had kissed her, the way he had looked at her and said, I want to build a life with you. Do it, she said firmly. I trust him. Briggs nodded slowly. All right. I will draw up the paperwork. That night, Temperance sat Eamon down and told him the plan. He stared at her like she had lost her mind. You want to add me to the deed? Yes. Temperance. If we lose, you lose everything. I know. Then why? Because I am betting on us. She took his hands. I am betting that we can win. And even if we do not, I would rather lose everything fighting with you than win alone. He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. You are the bravest person I have ever met. She laughed, shaky. I am terrified. So am I. He pulled back, met her eyes. But I am with you. The next day, they signed the deed. Eamon Rourke became co-owner of the hotel, and with it, secured his legal standing as a resident. Cord was furious. He filed an emergency motion, but the judge denied it. The auction would proceed as scheduled. 2 days before the auction, Eamon disappeared. Temperance woke to find his room empty, his saddlebags gone. Panic clawed at her chest. She ran to the shop, to the church, to every corner of town. No one had seen him. Briggs found her at noon, wild-eyed and frantic. I just got word. Eamon rode out last night. Headed north. No. The word came out broken. He would not leave. Not now. Briggs hesitated. Temperance. There is something else. Cord's men were seen following him. Her blood went cold. How many? 3. She grabbed his arm. We have to go after him. It is too late. They have a 12-hour lead. Then we ride fast. She turned and ran for the stable. Briggs caught her. Temperance. Stop. If you ride out now, you will miss the auction. And if you miss the auction, Cord wins by default. She wanted to scream. I do not care about the auction. I care about Amon. And Amon cares about this town. He would not want you to throw it away for him. The truth of it hit her like a fist. She sank to her knees in the dirt, shaking. Why would he leave? Briggs knelt beside her. I do not know. But I trust him. And I think you should too. She closed her eyes. Then, she nodded. The morning of the auction, Temperance dressed in her gray cotton and walked to the courthouse alone. The whole town was there. Briggs met her at the door. Any word? She asked. No. His face was tight. But the auction starts in 10 minutes. Are you ready? No. But I am here. They walked inside. Cord was already seated, smug and confident. The judge took his place. The auctioneer stepped forward. We are here to auction the water rights to Willow Creek. Opening bid is $500. Cord raised his hand. 500. Temperance's voice cut through the room. 600. The crowd murmured. Cord turned to glare at her. She met his eyes. Steady. 700. Cord said. 800. The bidding climbed. 900. 1,000. 1,200. Temperance's heart pounded. She was matching Cord dollar for dollar, but she knew he had more. She knew he could outlast her. 1,500. Cord said, and smiled. Temperance opened her mouth, closed it. She was out. She had nothing left. Going once, the auctioneer said. Temperance's hands clenched. This was it. They had lost. Going twice. The door slammed open. Amon strode in, dust-covered, exhausted, and grinning. 2,000, he said. The crowd erupted. Cord shot to his feet. Where did you get that money? Amon crossed to Temperance and dropped a heavy ledger on the table in front of the judge. From the sale of my share in the Nevada mine. Teller signed over his half to me before he went into custody. I rode to Carson City to finalize the paperwork and wire the funds. It is all legal, documented, and waiting in the Dust Basin account. The judge flipped through the ledger. Then he nodded. The bid stands. Cord's face went purple. You cannot. I can. Amon turned to the auctioneer. $2,000. Cash, ready to transfer today. The auctioneer looked at Cord. Do you wish to counter? Cord stared at Amon, then at Temperance. Then, slowly, he sat down. No. Going once. Going twice. Sold. To Mr. and Mrs. Amon Rourke. The room exploded. Cheers, shouts, applause. Temperance could not move. She stared at Amon, and he grinned at her, wild and exhausted and victorious. Then she launched herself at him. He caught her, lifted her off her feet, and spun her around. She kissed him hard, not caring that the whole town was watching. When they broke apart, breathless and laughing, he whispered, I told you I would not leave. You scared me half to death. I know. I am sorry. He set her down gently. But I had to make sure we won. We did. She cupped his face. We won. That night, the town threw a celebration. Tables set up in the street. Food and music and laughter. Temperance stood on the hotel porch, watching the festivities, and felt Eamon's arms wrap around her from behind. Are you happy? He asked quietly. She leaned back against him. Yes. Good. Because I have a question. She turned in his arms. What question? He pulled a small box from his pocket. I bought this 5 years ago. I was going to give it to you at the wedding. But I left, and it has been sitting in my saddlebag ever since. He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring. I know we are already married, but I want to do this right. Temperance McCrae Rourke, will you marry me? Again. For real this time. Her vision blurred. Yes. Yes. 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, and she kissed him. Soft and slow and full of promise. The spring wedding happened 2 months later. This time, Eamon showed up. This time, Temperance wore white. This time, the whole town gathered to watch them exchange vows that meant something. And when the preacher said, "You may kiss your bride," Eamon pulled her close and kissed her like he meant to spend the rest of his life proving he would never leave again. They rebuilt the blacksmith shop together. Bigger this time. Better. Eamon worked the forge, and Temperance ran the hotel, and in the evenings, they sat on the porch and watched the town grow. The water flowed. The crops thrived. Dust Basin became a place people wanted to stay, not a place they passed through. And every night, when Eamon came home smelling of smoke and iron, Temperance would meet him at the door, and he would pull her close and whisper, "I am not going anywhere." And she believed him. 1 year later, on a warm June morning, Temperance stood in the garden behind the hotel and felt Eamon's arms wrap around her waist. His hand settled on the curve of her belly, and she covered it with hers. "Are you scared?" she asked. Terrified, he admitted, but also happy. Me too. They stood there, watching the sun rise over the hills, and Temperance thought about the girl she had been 5 years ago, standing in a church, waiting for a man who never came. Broken and bitter and convinced she would never trust again. She thought about the woman she was now, married to that same man, carrying his child, running a town that thrived because they had fought for it together. And she realized that sometimes the best stories are not the ones that go as planned. Sometimes the best stories are the ones that break you first, so you can rebuild stronger. Eamon pressed a kiss to her temple. "What are you thinking?" "That I am glad you came back." He turned her in his arms, and his eyes were soft. "I am glad you let me stay." She kissed him, slow and sweet, and felt the baby kick between them. Eamon laughed, bright and amazed, and rested his forehead against hers. "We are going to be all right," he whispered. "I know," she said. And she meant it. The years passed. The baby became 2, then 3. The blacksmith shop thrived. The hotel expanded. Dust Basin grew from a struggling outpost to a proper town, with a school and a church and a main street that bustled with life. And every spring, on their anniversary, Eamon and Temperance would walk to the creek, where the water still flowed clear and cold. and he would take her hand and say, "I would do it all again." And she would smile and say, "So would I." Because in the end, love is not about perfect beginnings. It is about showing up. It is about fighting together. It is about choosing each other. Every single day, even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. And Temperance and Eamon chose each other, over and over, until choosing became as natural as breathing. They built a life. They built a home. And they built it together, one day at a time, in the heart of the Wild West, where the wind still blew and the dust still swirled. But the love they forged held strong against every storm. The end.